We're going to talk about precarious manhood and what it is and how it works. And then we're going to talk about how it's literally a trap for young men and men. Precarious Manhood and the Trap. Men Are Good with Tom Golden. Okay, so what is this thing called precarious manhood? Just what is it? And scientists in the last, I think, 10 to 15 years have come up with this idea of precarious manhood, where they've noted that precarious manhood is something where men have to prove that they're men. They can't just assume that they're men. You know, with girls when they go through puberty and they have their period, and it's like they're assumed to be women from that point forward. They are women, period. Doesn't change. But with men, it's not like that. Men have to prove it. Now, what does the research say? The research says three things about it, basically. One is that its manhood is widely viewed as an elusive, achieved status, or one that must be earned, in contrast to womanhood, which is an ascribed or assigned status. Okay? So you have to earn manhood, and you have to earn it just about every day. You have to always be on the lookout that, I may be losing my manhood card. Now, I want you to think about this. How many times have you heard women say something like, he's so sensitive, he's his ego is so fragile, he has to prove himself all the time. Have you heard that before? I've heard it lots of different times. And really, you see, women do not understand this because they have no such thing for women. They don't have to prove anything. Once they go through puberty, they're women. And they don't understand that men literally have to prove this stuff on a daily basis. They have to prove that they are indeed men. And so they're assuming that we're like them, and we ain't like them. So be it. Number two. Second, once achieved, manhood status is tenuous and impermanent. That is, it can be lost or taken away. And guys are very, very aware of this. And so we tend to be aware of our status level and where we are in that hierarchy, because literally what this is doing is, what science is finally figuring out is, men live in a hierarchy. Men live in a hierarchy, where we understand that somebody's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and we understand that we're seventh. In this particular category, we're here or we're there. And this hierarchy actually helps us to get things done. On a ball team, for instance, you have the quarterback, he calls the signals, right? I mean, he's the hierarchy, he's at the top. And everyone does what he says. It's just assumed that people will follow through on that kind of thing. And that's, that's the way hierarchy works. Military, you see the hierarchy on the sleeve. There it is. And so if the corporal has two stripes and you have one, you do what the corporal says. So hierarchy has its benefits. It helps us to kind of work together. It helps us to get things done. But men work in an informal, unpublished hierarchy also, where we are aware of who is ahead of us and who is not. And as we'll see later on, this causes problems sometimes. Number three. Third, manhood is confirmed primarily by others and thus requires public demonstrations of proof. Manhood is confirmed by others and therefore requires confirmations of proof. And the confirmations have to be convincing. They can't be someone going, I'm a man today. No, that doesn't work. You've got to do something that lets people know that you are actually this man, which means basically you have agency. Because I think that a lot of what they're looking at here is agency, whether you can get things done. If you can get things done, then you are more masculine. You're more of a man. And getting things done, of course, has to do with agency and taking care of business. So those are the three things. And it's fascinating. They've done some research following this up. And one of the things they found is that men are indeed more anxious about their gender identity than are women. Women don't have to be anxious about it. They're not tested on it. They don't have to prove anything. But men do have to prove things. And so this is something that sticks with men, and it doesn't stick with women. And again, the women are not going to understand this unless someone's taught them that this is the case. And a lot of times people, mostly all women and most men have never been taught about this. They have no idea that there's such a thing as precarious manhood and that men literally have to prove themselves on a day-by-day basis. So that's the basics of precarious manhood and how it works. But it gets much more complicated because this whole status thing is very, very important in the hierarchy. And men are biologically geared to hone in on this. Guess what happens? Good old testosterone. What does testosterone do? It makes men want to strive for status. Strive for status. Now, what does that do? And how does that connect with precarious manhood? Obvious. If you have to strive for status, then you want to make sure that your manhood is acknowledged and is known. You want to prove it. You want to prove it. So men are juiced to jump into this arena and to prove that they are something, right? This is our biological self that's pushing us to do this. Strive for status, strive for status, strive for status. Pushes us into this precarious manhood thing, which says men have to prove that they're men. And so that pushes us even farther into this whole deal. Now, testosterone does a bunch of other things. Not just striving for status, but it lowers fear. So here we're going to strive for status. We're going to push to prove that we're men, and we are going to have less fear involved. So you're much more likely to take risks. And that's something else that testosterone does, is it pushes us to take risks. So you seeing how this is a trap? Oh boy, but there's one more element that testosterone does that almost no one knows about that plays into this whole deal. And that is testosterone pushes what they call threat vigilance in men. Threat vigilance. What is that? Well, that means that if someone challenges a man, he is much more likely, due to testosterone, to feel the need to respond. He's got threat vigilance. He wants to make sure that he is not insulted or his manhood is not taken down in some way or another. And testosterone pushes him to prove that he is a guy, he's a man. And this threat vigilance thing sits there. Can you see how this is a trap for men? I mean, men, we have the social side, the precarious manhood side, which says, oh, prove to us that you're really a man. Okay. But then we've got the biology side on the other side, pushing him into that. He's striving for status, lower fear, higher risk, and threat vigilance. Now, women do not have threat vigilance. They don't have that. So, of course, she's going to say, why does he always seem to have to prove himself all the time? I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of him having to prove himself. It's so ridiculous. She doesn't understand he's got this juice inside him that's pushing him. It pushes him to this threat vigilance thing. Can you see how this is a big mess? Now can you understand that violence in a bar originates with what? Probably threat vigilance is a part of it. Striving for status is another. And precarious manhood. Why? Because every bar fight I've ever seen has to do with dominance. Who's on top and who's not. Someone has been insulted. Someone's manhood has been questioned. Somehow someone has been taken down a rung or two. And then they have to prove. They have to prove through this threat vigilance thing that they really are a man. Now, this happens all the time. Think back to middle school. All the fights between boys in middle school. Now, there were some fights between girls, probably, but not as many as the boys. The boys would fight. What were they fighting about? Who is higher in the hierarchy? Someone has insulted someone and told him, no, you're not as high as me. Oh, yes, I am. Oh, no, you're not. Oh, yes, I am. Boom! You've got this risk-taking, threat vigilance, striving for status, and precarious manhood. All of these things are like gasoline on a pile of twigs, and then light the match and kaboom, it blows. Can you see now how for men, this whole thing of striving for status, this whole thing of threat vigilance, the whole thing of precarious manhood is a trap. It pushes men into this. Now, who is the real loser in a trap like that? Who do you think the real loser is? The real losers are the ones who can't find their way out of it without using some sort of aggression or violence. And that's the other piece, the other sad piece of all of this, is that the research literally says aggression is a manhood restoring tactic. Aggression is a manhood restoring tactic. So when all else fails, in order to restore that manhood, in order to move up a bit, in order to solve the precarious manhood piece, aggression is one solution. It's not a good solution, almost never a good solution, but it is a restoring to manhood that happens because we become aggressive. I mean, think about it. There are young men and boys who've grown up in environments where that was the only, or one of the only ways to prove their manhood was through being aggressive, being violent, right? I mean, can you understand now how these boys were pushed by precarious manhood and by that striving for status, they want to be on top, to use aggression and violence because that was the way that they could prove that they were men. Can you see that? What a mess. So really, we're biologically different, and this biological difference makes a big impact on what's going on with this whole precarious manhood thing. And I firmly believe we need to start teaching our young men and our boys about their bodies and about their biology, about their testosterone, which pushes them to strive for status, which pushes them to have threat vigilance. Those kinds of things. They need to know that. And they need to be taught different ways to respond to stressful, precarious manhood situations. They need to learn. And once you understand that you are in a potential trap, then you can be taught different ways to respond. Gosh, cuckoo. One of the things that I've seen men do, really mature, wonderful men, is use humor as a means to break out of this mess. I bet you know some guys too who are like that. Almost any predicament they get into, they can use humor. Everyone starts laughing, right? And then they're out. Then they're well thought of. The other guy's well thought of too, probably. And the whole thing gets diffused. Lincoln, when he was in the White House, it was a White House Christmas party, and there was this one particular woman who was known to be nasty, and she came up to Lincoln during the party, and Lincoln's talking with these other people. She came up in the White House Christmas party and comes up to him and says, "President Lincoln, don't you think your legs are far too long?" What did Lincoln do? He looked at her and he said, "Madam, actually, I've always found them the perfect length to reach the floor." Everyone laughs. Ha, 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 ha. She goes away pissed off because she didn't get what she wanted. She wanted to piss him off, right? And anytime we're able to defuse a situation like that, when someone's trying to troll us, trying to come in and get us upset, we walk away feeling good if we can do like Lincoln. And that person who's trolling walks away feeling what they had to begin with. They're walking away feeling that angst or that anger or whatever it was driving to begin with to get you upset. So that's a good lesson to think about, guys. And maybe we should do a video on that one time, how to stay out of things. But there's lots of things we can teach boys how to do. We can teach them how to listen. Just listening and trying to see the other person's side of things. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes this can defuse the situation. "Oh man, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that sucks. I didn't mean to do that." A little apology thrown in. You save face, you keep your face, but the other guy goes, "Well, okay, shit, screw it, Then you walk away intact. And there's all kinds of little things we can teach people to do. Little stories like that, little Lincoln stories, or being funny, or apologizing, or listening, or seeing their side of things. And you probably think of 100 more, but these are the kinds of things we need to teach boys, because that way we can help them defuse these fights before they happen, and to understand that their goodness is within them. It doesn't have to do with this manhood thing. This manhood thing is very blue pill. It's very much the idea that we need to take care of women. We need to provide. We need to protect. We need to be on top of that. Take the red pill and understand that your worth is inside. Your worth is in your being, not just in your doing. It is in some of what you do, and that's okay. But also it's in your being. Yeah, maybe that's a good place to stop. So men are good, as are you. And let's all be like Lincoln, eh? He's a smart guy. Men are good. Take care.